All right, hello everyone. This is Nancy Rebecca going live on YouTube this morning, and I'm going to be talking about the subject of why do I date the same type of person over and over and over again? So that's the topic that we're going to talk about. Let me just wait a few seconds to give you time to find this uh, recording, and then we will get started. So if you are hopping on YouTube live, if you'll go ahead and make a comment in the comment section so that I know that you're here, that would be great. So the reason why I chose, or the subject chose me, is in the September frequency forecast. I was always talking about what Spirit came through to say is that these next few months, and we've actually been leading up to this over the previous months, where relationships are really starting to shift and change. Those dynamics in relationships are changing. Things that we could tolerate or we found acceptable in the past are changing. So there's a lot that's changing in relationships. And in fact, this is so powerful and potent of a subject. This whole fall equinox that's going to be coming up in a couple of weeks, I've dedicated that entire equinox group reading event to shifting energetic patterns in relationships, because we are heading towards unity consciousness. And if we can't start to break some of those patterns, we're going to have a more challenging time connecting with the larger global community patterns that are coming up right now. So, all right, I see you. Hi, Leanne. Sorry if you had trouble finding me. Hello, Rebecca. Yeah, thank you. Yes, I just got back from Phenomicon, which is a big paranormal conference in Vernal, Utah. Uh, yeah, I could go on about that, and but I had a wonderful time. I learned a lot. I came home saying, I have dramatically changed, but I don't know if I could even begin to explain how I've changed. But some really weird things have been happening as when I got back with my phone and computers and the lights flickering. So, yeah, pretty exciting. So, the subject of relationships. So, in the September frequency forecast, Spirit said all of our relationships are changing, and they're dramatically changing. And it's not just our relationships with another person, because I know there's a lot of you out there who are have chosen to not be in a relationship, but you're still in a relationship with yourself. You're still in a relationship with your pets. You're still in a relationship with your family, your neighbors, your workmates. So you're still in all of those relationships. You're in a relationship with Mother Earth. You're in relationship with the galactic universal center. So there's a lot that's shifting. And so we're going to talk about that. Mostly about personal relationships is what we're going to be talking about today. And again, the subject for those of you just hopping on is, why do I date the same type of person over and over and over again? So hello, Warrior Girl, and hi, Don and Ernie and Donna Duff and Angela. Nice to have you all on this morning. So as usual, I have a lot to talk about in a short period of time, but no worries, because I will follow up with a blog where I will cover much more detail, and that'll come out next week. All right, so have you ever noticed that you leave one relationship and you promise that you're never going to get involved with someone like that again, and bam, you are in another relationship where they have the same exact patterns? And this is the strange thing, is that that other person can present totally different than the one you just left. But when the rubber meets the road, that's where those underlying patterns come up that are exactly the same. And you can get caught again. Have you ever found that your partner has similar qualities to family members? So often, what I notice working as a psychic, clairvoyant, I'm also a nurse, what I notice is, more often than not, we will choose a relationship that mimics our family patterns. And I would say energetically, that's a that's a truth about 90% of the time. And I will tell you, people find that very, very shocking. But I'll get into some of the kind of the psychological background of patterns of relationships, but my expertise has to do with the energetics, the energetic patterns that can bring you together with another person. So I often say, I'll know when I have a strong connection with someone. So it does not matter how they're kind of behaving in the world, because if I have that soul connection, none of that other stuff matters. But if you cannot continue to remember your soul connection, if you allow that other stuff to get in the way, that's going to create some challenges. So good morning. Good morning, Mary. So how many of you have ever stated, I will never be like my mother, I'll never be like my father? And as you start to grow older, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm exactly like my mother, and I'm exactly like my father. And you want to know something? Your parents said the same thing, and your grandparents said the same thing, and their parents. So generationally, everybody always says the same thing. And then you have your children, and they say the same thing about you. So what are we going to do about that? We're going to shift some energy. So, in psychology, there are psychological theories that they learn in therapy school and mental health school and psychology school, different scenarios of different relationships, and they kind of fall into those patterns. So I'm not going to get into that in a deep way, but attachment theories and how you carry those attachments, whether you had good attachments or not with your parents, is going to spill over into your adult relationships. The family of comfort. You know, we all say, even if we came from a family background that was very abusive and very stressful, it's still very familiar. And so often you can create those same patterns as much as you don't want to, because you want to stay in those patterns that are comfortable for you. Even the family dynamics and playing out those roles, like I'm an oldest child. I'm probably not going to be in a relationship with somebody else who's also an oldest child, because I need to be the oldest child. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But also the energetics, and that's what I'm going to talk about the most, because if you have this resonant frequency with someone, that's going to be the dominant reason almost more than anything. And remember, I also just want to cover, all of these patterns are changeable. You're not stuck in any of these patterns. The more that you heal the energetic patterns, the more you're going to attract someone of that same resonance. And right now, as we're going through these spiritual changes and going through them rapidly, and maybe you've been in a relationship with someone for 20 years and you're wondering, is that resonance going to change so much that the relationship may not survive it? And that's a potential possibility. So, but what I have found is, if you can ride that wave for a while, eventually your partner will catch up, or eventually you will meet again with this common resonance of vibration and frequency. So, but often we can't ride that wave out. It can be too stressful, and we want to look for peace. And anyway, let me go on. So some common scenarios that can happen: the people will tend to repeat relationship patterns, such as attraction to the same personality trait. Good, Priya. Priya says, I love this talk already. So you can be attracted and want to date someone who has a similar personality trait. But this is the thing. That personality trait may be just a small aspect of who that person is. How many of you have ever dated or kind of hung out with somebody as a friend, but then once you get to know them, once they relax into a different place, it's like, oh, there's those true colors start to show up. And so, yeah, I dated my ex-husband 2 months and we ran off and eloped. So I didn't know him very well. I knew this this certain, aspect. And he was a wonderful person until he wasn't, which had nothing to do with him being a wonderful person. He was the product and the influence of, some old family patterns, but he was also a police officer. So those, seeing the harshest of the harshest of the harshest in society, and having to kind of hold that line and that strong boundary, and having to be the tough person all the time, just didn't really translate when he could no longer kind of shift back to his personality. So even your work, if you're a physician or a nurse or a teacher, there's those certain personalities or energetic frequencies that if you're in that for a long time, it becomes an intimate part of your personality, may not translate well in the intimate relationships that you have at home. Good morning, Eric. So choosing unavailable partners. Some people have a pattern of entering into a relationship with individuals who are emotionally unavailable, leading to a cycle of unfulfilling connections. And there's reasons for this. Or if you want to seek validation, you will often choose a relationship that's opposite of the validation, that they may be very critical and they may be dismissive and demeaning to you. So you're wanting the validation from them, and yet they're giving you anything but validation. And so, these are some patterns that can rear their ugly head. Repeating, and I wrote in my notes, this is big, BIG exclamation point. Repeating parental dynamics as a psychic, as a clairvoyant, as someone who can see the energy field, as someone who has assisted my long-term clients go what I call beyond the beyond. What's behind that? What's behind that? What's behind that? And when it gets distilled down to the bottom, it is always a relationship with the parent that is underlying everything that has to do with your current relationship. And I know people get shocked about that. I get shocked about that, but it's the truth. And not all parental patterning is negative. Once you start working through those negative patternings that you blame your parents for, once you clear that out of your field, you start to see the beautiful aspects of your parents. Now, I'm not talking about really abusive, torturous, traumatic parental experience. The majority of us are somewhere in between. So what I'm saying here doesn't apply to that. That's a whole different ball game that I'm just going to put over here for now. So again, a lot has to do with family patterns. So there was a situation where, so I had this client, and this client came in, and I think I've kind of shared this story a little bit before, but it's worth sharing it again. So this client was having difficulty in relationships. Relationships kept, this man had relationships with women that kept abandoning him. And this last one, and each time it hit him hard, like it was devastating, because this had been a long-term relationship of about 15 years. They were not married, but he just came home one day and they were just gone. There was like no goodbye. This is the reason why I'm going. I mean, there were definitely patterns there that have been talked about, but there was just no goodbye note. It was just this person was gone. And so he was quite devastated. And the level of devastation didn't quite match what happened. This is the first thing that I recognized as a psychic. It's like, okay, how this person's responding to this is this big, but the situation is like this big. So I knew that there were some relationship patterns behind the behind. But it isn't like, as a psychic, I could just say, bam, I know what this is. Let me name it. we had to walk this gentle cycle. I wasn't going to be able to say right away, this has to do with this. This person wasn't ready to go there. And so we worked together for over a year, but it was about the 6-month mark where suddenly it was like, okay, so what's behind that? This pattern with this relationship that just abandoned you. And when we got down to the core of it, finding out that his mother had died when he was 16 years old. So she didn't intend to abandon him, but she had illness and she died and she left. So it's suddenly he has this incredibly close relationship with his mother, and then suddenly she's gone. That was like ripping his heart apart. So what happened energetically was he would get into another relationship that would rip the heart, and another relationship that would rip the heart, and another relationship that would rip the heart. And that wounded heart just kept getting ripped open over and over and over again. And so something needed to change. So energetically, I needed to help take him back to before when his mother passed, so that we could start to heal those things and then make his heart stronger in that, and then go back to the relationships where he could see that pattern. And what was fascinating about all that is that person who had left, just with no note, nothing, no goodbye, no nothing, came back into his life. Isn't that fascinating? So the moment he was healed of all that, and he was so happy, but guess what? He wasn't attracted to them anymore. He wasn't attracted to them anymore. And that caused confusion. So I had to explain to him, it's because that person had to fit into an energetic pattern of abandonment. And now that you've healed that abandonment wound, they can no longer fit. They have to change that pattern if they want to fit back into your life. So that was huge. And I have witnessed things like that as a psychic over and over and over again. Okay. So you can be attracted to the same personality traits. You can choose a partner that's unavailable, that's going to abandon you because you might have that abandonment wound, seeking validation, repeating parental dynamics. Some people have a fear of intimacy, and that can be a family pattern. Maybe your mother had a fear of intimacy, or your father. So then that you carry that pattern, and you're going to get in a relationship with someone who struggles to be intimate, and so they're not available. And that's to help you with that wound of challenges to be intimate. Good morning, Tanya and Lena. Codependency. Oh my gosh, we all know this one, right? We all know this one. And I think everybody has some level of this, where the codependency is when you're going to compensate for maybe what's missing. You're going to help that person compensate for what they can't compensate for. But the thing is, they're helping you compensate for what you can't compensate for. So codependency, suffering from abuse, this is big. So I had another client who their mother had left the relationship when they were less than a year old because the parent was violently abusive. So it had to happen. But what ended up happening was, when that person grew up, they continued to attract violently abusive relationships. This is mind-blowing when you think about it, because this infant wasn't around that violence after 6 months old or a year old, and yet they kept finding these patterns were repeating and didn't know where it came from, because they grew up in a beautiful home after that, only to find out when we went beyond, what's behind that, and then found, oh, okay, so you're carrying forward that relationship dynamic that your mother had with your father, and that carried on. And so then once we get to that core, energetically, we can start to shift that. Um, so those suffering abuses, you will tend to be drawn to abusive partners as you energetically healing that. So remember when I talked about the person whose heart ripped and ripped and ripped? It's like eventually once you heal that wound and it's really strong, you're you won't be attracted, or you can't draw in those who might want to poke that wound over and over and over again. So patterns of affairs, this is another big one. I can't tell you how many, men have affairs, and it's a pattern. And yet the woman will meet and marry, become engaged, fall in love, and think that that partner is completely different. And then their spouse has an affair. And they're like, oh my gosh, you're much more like my father that did that than I previously realized. Okay, so people who have secure attachments as children tend to have healthier relationships as adults. So I don't know. I've worked with thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and maybe it's just because of my own energetic patterns, but I rarely meet someone who had two healthy relationships. It's just, I began to wonder after a certain time, do two parents who are healthy actually exist? I began to even question that. Now, I have met some since, but it's if you have had two healthy relationships with your parents and you grew up in a healthy, secure environment, you want to thank your lucky stars that you came into this lifetime with that type of stability, and that you're able to carry that stability on to your own relationship and through to your own children, because that's a huge, huge blessing. We will also tend to be with family. I already said that, gravitate towards family patterns that you grew up with, even if the family dynamics were very abusive. We've heard the term that you want to stay in something that's familiar because you're afraid of the unfamiliar. I remember when I left my relationship after 18 years, I thought, it's just so much easier to stay with what's familiar. So I had to really stick with my focus of the desire to change patterns. But it took about 3 years before I could finally say, wow, it was worth it. But wow, it was a lot. It felt like a lot of work at the time. So, okay, so I'm going to jump to, what did Eric say? Why do some people just jump from one relationship to another without a break in between? Well, it's interesting because I actually talked to a psychologist about this, Eric, who said that sometimes it's so hard for someone to leave a relationship that they need to have another relationship to focus on to let them leave the previous relationship. So it's almost like they can't do it themselves. They need to have somebody else to help them to do that. Yeah, it's ideal. I remember once my sister said, spending time alone and healing yourself is incredibly overrated. She said it's much nicer to be in a relationship, but these are patterns. So let me just talk about the energetics. Let me get to. Okay. So as a person when you're in ultimately you're in a spiritual relationship. Okay, ultimately. And in that spiritual relationship, you could have had past lives with them. So you can have those past life dynamics that need to be worked out. And I remember working with another client who just could not understand the relationship that they were in and why they were in it. And they felt like they were having to pick up the pieces of this other person all the time. And they felt like this person just couldn't cope. And they felt like this person couldn't stand in their strength. And they just didn't know why they were with them. But what ended up happening was a past life came up where this person they were in a relationship with did this for them. that they had been sickly in a past life, they had been in bed, they hadn't been able to get up and walk, they hadn't been able to feed themselves. And so this person they're in a relationship now with took care of them their whole life and never abandoned them and never left them. And so it was like in the pattern now they were going to switch so that now that person that had been cared for in the past life could now care for that other person. There was a way of kind of energetically bringing it back into balance and harmony. But most of the time, that person is going to emit the same frequency. And this is the wild thing. We talk about the law of attraction. So energetically, you're going to think about a key and a key going into the lock. But it has to fit perfectly. Those little, patterns in the key that's cut by the locksmith, it has to fit in and it has to be able to turn that lock and open that door. So ultimately, you're going to be attracted to someone who's going to help unlock some bits about yourself. It's going to help unlock some of those patterns within you. And you may not like them unlocking those patterns, but remember, energetically and spiritually, you've come together to have those opened awarenesses, have that other person come in and unlock that door. And if you just can't stay in that, if it's just too hard, you're going to shift to another relationship, but you're going to have to find that similar key if you have not healed your lock so that they can come in and help you unlock more. So let me give you the example of someone who's gone in childhood. It was very unsafe for them in childhood. There were a lot of unsafe things that they were exposed to. And then they're going to be in a relationship. So that lock is this person's going to be the protector. This person's going to help add the strength and the boundaries in the household so that the person who was abused will feel safe. But what happens as the abused person goes through therapy, they go through energy work, they're reading self-help books, they're processing, they're getting stronger, they're exposed to events in their life that help them to stand up. Now you've changed the pattern in the relationship. And so now you've got this key that's supposed to be the protector key, and no longer this individual needed protection. And that person felt displaced. They didn't know what to do. It's like, well, if I'm not protecting you, I don't know how to be any other way. So sometimes those relationships have to change if that protector can't change. And I see this a lot, a lot of patterns with men who are kind of that genetic ancestral line of being the protector, being the breadwinner, putting the food on the table. And these energetic dynamics are changing so much because we have a lot of the women who are now stepping into that kind of goddess warrior phase. And then the men now in relationships feel displaced. They don't know what their role is. They're trying to learn what their role is. What do I see as a psychic? Ideally that you both come together in relationship with a sense of freedom, a sense of individuality, respecting each other's differences, highly respecting each other's differences, and not trying to project and make the other person like your mother or like your father or like your sibling or like what you pretend and imagine. Perfectionism. So, how many of you have dated someone and your relationship was a certain way and it was fantastic, and the minute you get married, everything changes? That happened to me. I remember suddenly feel like, well, what is a wife supposed to do? When you're married, what is a marriage supposed to look like? I fell into that wifely married pattern so fast it could make my head spin. And it was the same with my husband. What's a husband? What's a father? What's this? What's that? And all of a sudden, we didn't even recognize each other anymore as those two individuals. So if you're conscious, you want to consciously go in to start, before you get married, to try to start dismantling those married patterns that you brought from your own parents, or maybe you brought from generations back that just repeat over and over and over again. Oh my gosh, emotions. What I've learned as a psychic clairvoyant nurse who's worked with people for a long time, 30 years. Oh my gosh, you're attracted to your emotional mate. So ideally, first you're going to be attracted to your soulmate, your spiritual mate. But often we're attracted to our emotional mate. How many of you have been in a relationship? You feel like the person you're in a relationship is emotionally immature. Oh, grow up. You're emotionally, it's like, why are they so emotionally immature? Well, you are attracted to your emotional mate. So you may see, like a mirror, their immaturity when it comes to fighting, where they go, man, you're a baby. It's like these 45-year-old men or women who are talking to each other like 2-year-olds. It's because you didn't grow up that emotional 2-year-old. And so it's great when the two of you in a relationship can recognize that, and then you choose to energetically start growing up. I call it growing up your second chakra, growing up your emotional chakra. So if one of you is healing and the other one isn't, then that can cause problems, because now suddenly you've matured. Your age might be 64 and your emotional age is 35, and your other partner is 70, but their emotional age is 2. That's going to cause a lot of conflict in the relationships. You have to shift the energetics. It's similar to family dynamics, right? How many of you have had a mother that was emotionally like a 2-year-old? That's tough. And then you're going to be attracted to someone else who's emotionally like a 2-year-old, so you can work out and heal those patterns. And it's not fun. But not to compare you all to a dog, but I started taking my puppy, Sadie, who's 10 months old now. I took her to doggy daycare. And the dog owner, she's just wonderful. There was this little dog. So Sadie's like 54, 55 pounds. And there was this little dog that's maybe like 25 pounds. And there's a lot of dogs in the field, but Sadie was only attracted to that dog. So the owner said, you would think that Sadie who's a chocolate lab, would be attracted to other chocolate labs, or would be attracted to dogs her size, or be attracted to male or female. But she said, Sadie's going to be attracted to a dog that's the same age as she is. So this little itty bitty 25-pound dog was 10 months old, just like she was. So that just really validates, when I talk about the emotional energetic patterns in a relationship, you're going to be attracted to someone who is similar of emotional age. And emotions are powerful drivers. Belief systems and thought patterns, your beliefs and thought patterns emit an energy. So it can shape your energetic field, so you can be attracted to partners who have similar belief systems, even if those belief systems are limiting and detrimental to the relationship. What happens when you start to change your belief systems? I know every one of you can say, all hell's going to break loose. If you're changing your belief systems, all heck is going to break loose. And the big ones are around religion, especially in spiritual development. Unresolved traumas and past experiences, again, yes, they can be past lives. Yes, they can be ancestral. But you can have deep patterns of trauma that's passed on. I've seen relationships where they had a healthy upbringing, but their mother didn't. They had a healthy upbringing, but their father didn't. And so, but their mother and father didn't have the consciousness to resolve it. And so then you might choose to resolve those traumas through your own body. So energetically, the only way to manage that is to move your mother's trauma out of your field, your father's trauma out of your field, so you can go back to feeling normal. And then we'll deal with other ways that you can help those family patterns. So you definitely want to break those energetic patterns by meditating, self-reflection, loads of energy healing, so that you can begin to break free from those patterns that no longer serve them. And it's strange, there's a lot of things I don't get about patterns, but like one of them is because I'm a psychic, clairvoyant, intuitive, I teach it. What I have found is the biggest skeptic, the biggest non-believers are the most incredible psychics if they can get over their skepticism and start training intuitively and psychically. Like, what is that? It's like they fight that gift so hard. So those are long-term patterns. And so there's some similar things in relationships where it's just hardcore. And this is the other thing. When the partner finally says, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore, what is that when their lover, wife, or husband suddenly says, okay, I'll change, I'll go to therapy, I'll work on stuff? Why do they fight it? And then suddenly they're going to try to fix it. So that happens a lot as well. But this is the big thing. I guess I'm going to wrap up in this conclusion. We're going to do a little meditation. In my lifetime, so I was born in 1959. So I was born in the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. There was this big curve bell of divorces. Married, divorce, married, divorce, married, divorce, married, divorce. What ends up happening is you get in a relationship pattern again with another person, another person, another person. But what I have found is if you can stick with it and you and your partner can stick with it during the hard parts, it's like you both kind of move over and then the relationship is stronger. And then you move through another hump and the relationship is stronger and you move through and it can get stronger and stronger and stronger. And sometimes it might take a year or two to keep coming back to center in that relationship, resolving it and working it out. And again, I'm not talking about abusive patterns. I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about verbal abuse. I'm not talking about that. But I have found that we lost that capacity to work through stuff. What I'm seeing is that capacity to start working through things is coming back. Relationships are starting to last longer again. For some reason, historically, we needed to go through that. So that's some exciting things as well. But I'm not just talking about, again, personal relationships, not talking about, but also work and family and all those. So Jennifer saying, this is why I choose to stay single. I do worry about what I've done as a parent to my children. At 17, my 17-year-old has no desire to date and has thousands of friends just like his mom. You are absolutely right, Jennifer. We have a whole generation who wishes to remain single. I'm not sure what that's about either. But what I can tell you, these patterns, if you choose to come into this earth as a spiritual being, if you believe in that theory that you choose your family and you choose your scenarios to learn the most lessons from, then we have to remember that our children are a part of that dynamic as well. But it still doesn't mean that you can't have those conversations with your children to say, hey, wow, if I had the emotional maturity I have now that I have then, I wouldn't have done some of these things. I'm sorry. I just didn't know, and I'm a work in progress. So it's still okay to own up to some of those things, but just know that you were both learning. But yeah, there's a lot of young people who are choosing not to have children and not to be in relationships. Okay, let's just do a meditation. We're just going to do a quick meditation. And in this meditation, we're going to just set our intention to let go of relationship patterns that no longer serve us. But I'm just going to remind you all that the fall equinox, I'll include, the link is included here, but in the fall equinox, as a group, we're going to come together. We're going to shift relationship patterns big time in the group reading. So that's all we're going to do today. Let's go ahead and close our eyes. And as you're turning within and talking to your body about relationships, you may want to apologize to your body for putting your own human body, your own human self in unsafe, unhealthy situations that did not show proper care and concern for your own body, your own emotional well-being. So first, if we think about our children, let's think about your own body and apologize for ways that maybe you put your body in unsafe situations. Thank your body for always being there for you, even though sometimes you didn't always feel totally safe or heard or validated. And then make a commitment to your body to continue to grow in healthy ways so that your human body can have a fulfilling life in all of its relationships. So grounding is that invisible energy force that helps stabilize your energy field. When you have a stable energy field, it enhances stability in your relationships. So right now, imagine a grounding force, which can be a tree with roots, it could be a lightning bolt, it could be mermaids, a barrel of monkeys, it can be a light beam. But go ahead and imagine this grounding force that goes around the area of your hips, and then it's going to extend from your auric field around your hips, navel area, all the way through the room that you're in, through the Earth's crust, to the center of the Earth. Really anchor and stabilize your auric field. So it can hold that steadiness while you're letting go of some old, outdated relationship patterns. And then intuitively choose, specifically ask your spirit to intuitively let you know what color of cosmic, it's going to be a transformative healing of relationship, cosmic energy, frequency, color, or colors. Ask your spirit to define what is best for you to use right now, and then call that frequency into the room where you are. And then ask your spirit to help you bring to the surface of your own energy field. Let it just come out of your body, out of your chakras, any old, outdated relationship patterns that are no longer appropriate for you at this point in your life. So you're just going to say, all old, outdated relationship patterns that I continue to carry with me that are just not right for me anymore, I'm going to release them now. And then state today's date, state your age, let that cosmic transformational energy flow through the top of your aura, the top of your head, just like standing underneath a shower. You're going to allow it to rinse through, and it's going to dissolve some of those old relationship patterns right now, right here, with many other people helping to do theirs at the same time. It gets extra potent. And then just let it dissolve and rinse down your grounding. I am willing and I am ready to let go of these out of balance relationship patterns. Just keep telling yourself, I am willing and I am ready to let go of these old, outdated relationship patterns. And just drop them right down your grounding. Set your intention, any perfect ideas that you have about relationship, the perfect woman, the perfect girlfriend, the perfect wife, the perfect husband or boyfriend, the perfect relationship. That perfectionism is going to kill you every time. So just set your intention to let go of perfectionism around relationships. Nobody's perfect. At a soul level, they are. But at the human level, nobody's perfect. Not even moms, not even dads, not even children. So go ahead and throw, for good measure, a little perfectionism down your grounding. Okay, I can tell that we could do this for a few days on end, but just set your intention as you're starting to open your eyes. Say, whatever shift I just made, I intend that it's going to be easily integrated into my body and into my current relationships with ease and effortlessness. And then go ahead and open your eyes and, and stretch. Yep, there's a lot of people that want to stay single. There's a lot of people who don't want to change their ways. A lot of people who feel like they can allow themselves to be free, and when they get in a relationship, they don't feel like they can be free anymore. Well, that's on you. So can you still enjoy the freedom and expression of who you are while you're in a relationship? That's the big question. All right, there's a lot. We could go on about this. This would be another 1 month long or 1 year long workshop, right? But anyway, loved the topic. Go out and spread the word. Go ahead and look the beyond of your own patterns and find some joy in your capacity to heal them. All right, don't forget to sign up if you want to work more on relationships with the fall equinox. The link is right here below, and I will see you again next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.